you're into the journey and stuff like that.
My lifting journey. I like that. It's a good time. I've fallen into a crevasse on my journey. Okay, so we're going to come back to this in just a minute. Okay, I like to do that to set the stage for you guys to try to get you in the mindset of here's what I would think. I think I would go and do. Okay, so we're going to first talk a little bit about why training works, what we're trying to do by going and lifting. Okay, and the same thing would apply if you wanted to walk or run or do any kind of exercise. The idea is the same. Okay, so and I know we mentioned some of this in the adaptations to resistance training. We talked about specificity, we talked about overload, we talked about disruption of homeostasis, but I want to show it this way, okay? And hopefully maybe this will help drive some of this home, and you can think about your kind of program in relation to this, okay? So one of the things we need to understand, okay, is that whenever you do anything, I had you guys do push-ups on Monday. While you were doing that exercise, you were doing your push-ups, there was an acute change in the physiology. Your muscles were generating force. ATP was being turned over in those muscles. The metabolic rate in those muscles went up, okay? You're moving through a stretch shortening cycle. There are things that are happening, right? Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your cardiac output goes up, your breathing rate goes up. All of these things that we can measure are changing with training. Okay? That change, the things that change, that's going to be the stimulus from that workout that will drive any sort of adaptation that may take place in the future. Okay? So we train, something happens and changes. That change disrupts homeostasis. That then stimulates the body to want to change things. Okay? So the next time you do push-ups, it's not quite so bad. Or the next time you go run, it doesn't feel quite so bad at whatever that number of reps or whatever that pace was going to be. And so eventually, if I train consistently and every other day or every third day or whatever, I'm evoking this stimulus, then I will eventually cause things to change. And I get this much more permanent change in my physiology. My muscles get bigger. The way my nervous system communicates with those muscles changes. Okay? Aerobically, which we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, your heart gets bigger. Your resting heart rate drops. Your stroke volume goes up. You get more mitochondria in your muscles. You get more capillaries in your muscles. You evoke this more permanent change, and that more permanent change, even though it all goes away if you stop doing it, but that change will ideally then help you reach your training goal. Okay? I'm out here doing all of this, suffering in the heat, right? Whatever is going on. I'm doing all of this. It's no fun. Maybe it's fun. It's never really fun for me. I'm doing this for some reason. I have a goal, right? I want my muscles to get bigger. I want to be able to do one pull-up. I'd settle for doing one real pull-up right now. Okay? So, right? I want to be able to bench press 300 pounds or squat whatever it is. Okay? You guys have some sort of goal in mind. So what we need to do when we train, when we design our programs, to me, it's just like designing, and you guys may not think about it this way, it's just like designing what I do in this class. I need to know the goal first. We do things backwards. Where are we trying to get to, right? With class, I think every day, what do I want you guys to know and take away from class every day? Right? When you leave, what do I want you to have gotten out of class? Okay? And so I have some goal. You guys are going to go train. You need a goal. I want to be strong. Right? what exercise, in what way. I want bigger muscles. What muscles? What do you want them to look like? Okay. I need to know my goal, and then I can work backwards. Well, what is the permanent or more permanent change in physiology that I need to let me achieve that goal? Okay, well, if I know what that is, I know what adaptation I need to take place, then I've got to figure out what is the proper stimulus to make that happen. Therefore, I need to train to evoke that particular stimulus. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand all of that? I didn't tell you guys what your goal was, did I? When I told you guys to come up with an exercise program. I just said, hey, we're going to go do something. What do we do? Okay. What we do may be a little bit different if your goal with resistance training is purely to be as strong as you can be, versus I want as big a muscles as I can get, or I want to do something that's going to actually help me get up and down stairs, right? Or recover function in this leg or this shoulder or something. Okay? And the idea behind all of this, we've already discussed, is the idea of specificity. The adaptations that take place will be very specific to exactly whatever it is that you do when you train. So if you do 3 sets of 10, you're going to get better at doing 3 sets of 10. Okay? There may be some level of transfer on that, where you're really better at 3 sets of 10, and now you can do a little more weight for 3 sets of 5 or something. There's going to be some transfer. But what you really, really, really get better at is exactly what it is that you're doing. Okay? So you need to think about all that. All right. Questions? You guys with me? Okay. If I ask you to recreate this on the test, could you do it? Okay. Things to think about. Okay. So let's talk about what the American College of Sports Medicine, which is kind of the generally accepted kind of top end thing. Let's talk about what they say you guys as healthy adults should do when you go to train. Okay? They say you should train each major muscle group with 2 to 4 sets. Most of you guys came up with that. 2 to 4 sets. Great. Okay? That's not to say 1 set, especially in untrained people, 1 set is fine. Okay? Show of hands again. How many of you guys had never done a lat pull down until the other day? Several of you. Okay? If I told you guys that today we're going to go and we're going to do 1 set of lat pull downs, that will work for about a month for you guys. You'll get better. You'll get stronger for about a month. And then you're no longer that untrained and we're going to do like 2 sets. Okay? But in general, 2 to 4 sets. So y'all are right in the middle. Okay? You need to feature what we call multi-joint or compound exercises. Did you guys, when you did the lat pull down the other day, did that involve movement at more than 1 joint? Yes, right? We could try to count however many joints, right? Here, pull. You could argue your wrist shouldn't be doing stuff, maybe a little bit. Elbow, shoulder for sure, so we're at least 2, okay? Multi-joint exercises. The reason we do multi-joint exercises is generally those involve the biggest muscle groups. Okay? They involve the biggest muscle groups, and when you move around in everyday life, and when you move around when you play sports or do something like that, that involves multi-joint movements. So we want to, in the best way that we can, try to mimic things because the adaptations are going to be kind of very close to, you're going to get better at doing multi-joint exercises when you do multi-joint exercises. Walking is a multi-joint exercise, right? So we want to try to mimic that as best we can. We want to train major muscle groups 2 to 3 days per week. So 2 to 3 days per week, 2 to 4 sets, big muscle groups. We want a resistance that allows 8 to 12 repetitions to be performed in each set. So most of y'all were kind of right in there. And so to get to 8 to 12, that generally corresponds to 60 to 80% of your maximal strength of your. Okay? And so that's flipped. 60% of 1 rep max is a weight using large multi-joint exercises that you should be able to lift about 12 times. Okay? 80%, you should be able to lift about 8 times. Okay? And so then as your percentage of 1 rep max goes up, as we go to 85, that's about 6. As we go to 90, that's about 4. As we go to 95, that's 1.5 to 2. Okay. As the percentage of 1 rep max goes up, then the number of repetitions we expect to perform will go down. Which is why I was a little concerned about our third set when we're already fatigued, trying to do 10 reps with 5 pounds less than what our max is. Okay. So for those of y'all that were just throwing out a number, okay, do 10 pounds less than what your 1 rep max was. You guys take it and get your phone out and do some math. 10 pounds less than if my max was 80 pounds, right? So I'm doing 70 pounds. What percentage is that? Like 85 or something, right in there. We're not too far off, okay? The reason that we use percentages, the reason this is the way to go, is it works for everybody. It works for every exercise. No matter how strong you are, no matter what muscle group it is, we're making what we're doing relative to that muscle group or that person's maximal strength. The maximal strength. That's the utility of using the percentage. We like to perform all reps in a controlled, deliberate fashion through a full range of motion, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Do them correctly, do the full range of motion. Okay? So, here's where we are. All right? So, most of you guys weren't that far off of doing something that looks a lot like this. Okay? What we could do now, we won't. What we could do is I could say, okay, get out your phone or your computer, and I want you to Google, I don't know, Muscle and Fitness magazine. And I want you to go and find what some sort of bodybuilding website suggests that you should do. And you'll see crazy things like do 16 sets of 2, right? Or, I don't know, some other kind of weird things where, you know, they'll call them, you guys are doing some things that are called drop sets, where it's like do a weight and then decrease the weight and try to do the same reps or more reps, or increase the weight and do the same reps or fewer reps and all of that. Like, that's fine. Like, whatever. Okay, whatever. The point of all of this is to work. If I've got 60%, is basically to work as close to those 12 reps or 13 reps as I can get. Right? You don't have to do this in every set, but the ideal way to train is, at least in your last set, is to go to something that we call failure. You need to lift until you cannot do another rep. Okay? Lift until you can't do another rep. That's going to ensure that you have overloaded the muscle, you've overloaded the metabolic system, right? That's going to be there. And it's that getting to failure that we think is the driving stimulus to make you get stronger and to drive to get your muscles to get bigger. Right? So if you lift something that's easy, I'm going to take, I don't know, like 40% of 1 rep max, and I'm going to do it 8 times when I could probably do it 16 or 18 times. It's not a lot of overload. You're not actually stressing your system very much. So there's no stimulus to adapt and to get better. Right? There's no stimulus to adapt and get better. That's the thing that people don't do the most. They don't work hard enough. Okay? They don't work hard enough. They don't overload. You could take that weight that's 40% of your 1 rep max, and if you just lift that weight until you can't do it anymore, we have some evidence that that works. Your top end strength won't go up as much as if you were working at higher percentages of 1 rep max, but from making your muscles bigger, there is some evidence that you can get hypertrophy using a very, very low percentage of 1 rep max, as long as you do enough repetitions that you go to failure in those sets. So in theory, you can take the pink 5-pound dumbbells and you can do curls with those, or you can do shoulder presses with those, and you could potentially get hypertrophy in whatever muscle group you're using if you lift those light weights the correct number of times to go all the way where you can't do them. The problem is, in a lot of people, that might be 30 or 40 or 50 or 80 repetitions. And you're just going to be like, I'm bored. I don't want to do this anymore. And if that's all you have available, you could do it. Okay? Does that as a concept make sense? Okay? There's nothing otherwise magic. There's nothing magic about 8 reps or 12 reps or 4 reps or 3 sets versus 4 sets versus 8 sets. There's no magic about all of that. Okay? There's no one thing that's in this fitness magazine that this is the thing. If you do this, and when it gets easy, when doing 3 sets of 8 reps with 80% of your 1 rep max gets to be a little bit easy, then add some weight and keep doing your 8 sets. If you're bored of doing 8 sets, then 8 reps, then do 10 reps one day. Okay? Change it up every month and do something that's a little bit different. But the key thing is to just continue to push as your 1 rep max goes up, that you're going to have to push the amount of weight you're lifting up. Most people start off and they're fine. Then they begin to adapt and they get stronger, which happens really quickly, right? Neural adaptations happen quickly. You can get 100% stronger in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something. As you get stronger, your 1 rep max goes up. So you've got to raise the weight to stay at 60% or 80%. But you've got to keep doing those things. Right? We call that progressive overload. You have to keep doing that, and you're not going to continue to adapt. And that's the piece that most people don't do. They either just don't go, they stop going, or they go and they don't continue to overload. Because it sucks. It's hard. Right? It's hard to kind of keep at it, and it's hard to go in there and work hard. Okay. Talk about those kinds of things. Some other programmatic things to keep in mind. Order of exercise. Generally, we want to work the multi-joint exercises using the largest muscle groups first. Okay. If you're going to squat, go squat first on the particular day. Then you can do your knee extensions. Then you can do your hamstring curls. Then you can do AB and adduction, like you can do those things secondary. Then you can go do your calf raises, I suppose, that you're going to do those kinds of things. Okay? You want to do large muscle groups first. Then ACSM calls those core lifts. I don't like that term. It confuses people with like core as in the actual sort of abdominal kind of body parts. Core, big muscle groups first, and then assistants, which are going to be more single joint, isolated, a bicep curl, a tricep extension, right? Just simply a knee extension as opposed to a squat or a power clean or something. Do these afterwards. The thought is if you do the assistance ones first. Any of you guys feel when you did the lat pull down, did you feel it in your biceps? Not really? We weren't doing enough reps. If we had done more reps, you can begin to feel that people that are stronger in their biceps are going to be better at doing a lat pull down than people that have the same size and strength of their lat muscles but have weaker biceps. It's an accessory. It's helping as I pull down. I'm doing some amount of elbow flexion. That helps a little bit. So if you do those exercises first, you tire out those muscles and then you can't lift as much here in your core exercises, and so you're not going to work your bigger muscles as hard. You're not going to be able to work your bigger muscles as hard. They will say alternate between upper body and lower body. This is the other part where people do programming things where it's like, today I'm going to work only chest muscles, and then tomorrow I'm going to work only leg muscles. And then, so people will oftentimes work like things that are going to be the same. So I'm going to work like chest, and then things that are the accessory muscles for doing chest exercises. So I'll do bench press, and I'll do triceps, right? And then maybe I'll do some shoulders or something. And on another day, I will do back, so I'll do rows and lat pull downs, and then I'll do bicep stuff. Okay, we call it push pull or something on those days, or I'll do a day where I do upper body and a day where I do lower body. But ACSM recommends just go do a whole body workout a couple of times per week. So if you're doing that, do an upper body exercise, then go do a lower body exercise, which you let your upper body rest, then come back and do another one, and you can alternate like that. Okay? There's a lot of ways to get at doing those things. A lot of that also depends upon what your goal is. In general, you want to hit each muscle group twice a week. Okay? Whatever it is that you're doing, however you want to split your program, you want to try to hit each muscle group twice per week. Okay? That's the kind of the ideal way to use that. How many of you have had principles of personal training or the strength and conditioning class? Okay, not very many of you guys. Okay, that's good. So I assume in those classes they talk about something called FIT principle. You guys have probably heard of this before. This is a nice acronym that will let us break up what happens in a workout. Okay, so with the FIT principle, the FITT stands for frequency, or the number of days per week that we're going to work out. The intensity is how hard it is, which is basically the amount of resistance, usually as a percentage of maximal strength. So days per week, percent of max. In resistance training, time is really going to come down to your total number of repetitions, which is the number of sets multiplied by the reps in each set. So 2 days per week, 70% of 1 rep max, 3 sets of 10 repetitions. And then type is just what exercise are we doing? I'm going to do squats and bench press and power cleans and back extensions and calf raises and whatever this is going to be. Okay? Every program that you read anywhere, that you see anywhere, that you do, you can evaluate it by grouping what people are doing by the FIT principle. This gives you a nice way to organize what they're saying you should do. Every program, to be as good as it possibly can be, needs to mention and prescribe every one of these things. Okay? It needs to very clearly indicate how many days per week we're going to do something. It needs to say what is the percentage of your maximal strength. It needs a guideline for what the intensity is. Lots of them that you find online, and y'all will do this when you do your critique of one, it will just say, do something that's hard. Well, what the hell does that mean? Okay? What I think is hard and what Devin thinks is hard may be very different. And what Emma thinks is hard may be even different still. So we need some way to more accurately and precisely prescribe intensity. That's why we use percentage of maximal strength. Okay? It works across every muscle group. It works across all people. Time, they need to prescribe number of reps and sets for sure, and they need to be very specific, and most of them are. They get this type part right. Really, it's the intensity piece. Of all of these 4 things, intensity is the one where there tends to be the most gray area. Okay? It's not enough information that we need that is provided. So you will do your resistance training critique, which will be due the week after our test. You're going to find something and you're going to analyze it based upon these things. The most common thing that those programs will not do and will not talk about is they will not do a good job at prescribing intensity. They'll be like, oh, you need 6 days a week and this on these days and these days, and 8 sets and 2 reps and 3 reps and drop step this and whatever, superset that. And then they'll never say like what the weight's supposed to be or how you arrive at figuring out what that weight is. Okay. Okay. So other things that people are going to talk about that are really beyond the scope of our class, but you may encounter these at some point, is something called training volume. So volume is, in a very easy kind of to consume way, it's the number of reps you're performing, the number of sets you're performing, the total times you're lifting something, and then the weight that you're lifting. You multiply all of those together, and you can get this volume. So just how much did you do today? And so some people will say the best way to increase hypertrophy or strength is to increase, you got to increase your volume. There's some evidence that that's correct. There's some evidence that that may not always be the case, but you may encounter this at some point. Some bros get really, really into whatever their volume is, calculating it and all of that. So it's important, but you know, maybe not the end all be all. Rest periods. Okay. Let me talk just for a second about rest periods. How long should you rest between sets? John, what do you think? How long between sets? 3 minutes. Great. Wonderful. Sounds good. Why did you pick that number? What was your rationale for that? You've done that. You heard that somewhere. You read it somewhere. Okay. Okay. You guys think 3 minutes is better than 2 minutes? Think 5 minutes is better or worse than 3? Does it matter? The answer is maybe it matters. But 2 is probably not better or worse than 3. It's probably not better or worse than 5. It all again depends upon what your goal is. The key thing is we need to rest. You need to rest. If you wait like 30 seconds, you're going to be fatigued. You're not going to be able to lift that weight as many times as you could if you waited a little bit longer. And so 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, all that we're really trying to wait on is for ourselves to get metabolically back to kind of some level of homeostasis where we've got enough ATP to do things, right? If you really, really, really care about being able to lift as much as you possibly can, as many times as you possibly can, you should probably wait 4 to 6 minutes in between sets, okay? So if your goal is I need to lift as heavy a weight as I can during this training session, because that's going to drive my neural adaptation to help me get as strong as I possibly can, then you probably need to rest a little bit longer between sets and exercises than someone that's just like, I'm here and I want to get stronger and I want muscles to get bigger, but I don't really, really care. I'm not going to be a powerlifter. I'm not going to be in some kind of competition. Okay? So we need to rest. There will be some people that will say, if you don't rest, that might be better. There was a paper that was published in the early 90s from a guy who is an amazingly famous and thoughtful exercise physiologist. His name is Bill Kramer. And they showed that if you rested 30 to 45 seconds between sets, in comparison to 3 to 5 minutes, that you released more growth hormone in response to those bouts of exercise with the shorter rest periods. Okay? This was in like 7 people, not the world's greatest sort of study, but it was really important at the time. Based upon that, a group that Dr. Kramer was one of the founding members of, with the guy that I did my PhD with, called the National Strength and Conditioning Association, their recommendations, you all probably use their book if you took personal training class. Their recommendation is they're going to say if you want to do quote unquote hypertrophy training, you need to do moderate sets, moderate reps, moderate weight. So like, 3 to 4 sets, 8 reps with a kind of moderate weight, and you need to have very short rest periods. All based on one study. As far as I know, it's never been replicated. And that we now have evidence that the growth hormone response right after a bout of exercise has no influence whatsoever on how big the muscles get. The hypertrophic response after exercise is not driven by the change in estrogen, testosterone, growth hormone, anything else that occurs, those hormonal changes right after one bout of exercise. Right? Hormones are important for growth, they're important for hypertrophy, but they're not related to the acute change. So maybe that does make growth hormone go up, but that increase in growth hormone isn't actually helping. So keep those things in mind. Just be wary of all of that. Also, if you care about doing something where you have to go fast, like you're going to be an athlete, then you may want to try to lift at a higher velocity because that will drive adaptation to be fast. Okay. So things of all of this to kind of consider. The other piece of this that we're going to apply when we do our critiques is something called PROS, or PROS. And the PROS stands for progression, regularity, overload, and specificity. Okay. So of these four things, we've talked about overload and specificity quite a bit. We've talked about progression a little bit. I'll talk about regularity now, and then we'll kind of hit these other ones just a little bit passing. This should all make some level of sense to you guys. Okay? Regularity in the PROS principles, regularity means you do it consistently. Okay, I've been consistently or regularly training for a month, or for 2 months, or for 6 months, or whatever it's going to be. Okay. We need regularity in our program, or you need to be consistent. So you can consistently provide that stimulus to drive adaptation. Okay. Okay. So one of these that we've mentioned, but we haven't talked about a huge amount as well, is something called progression. Okay. So progression is the concept and the idea that the demands on the body must continually increase or change over time in order for adaptations to occur. Right? We oftentimes group progression with overload. And the idea is you do something and it works initially, and then you adapt to it. And then you need to progress and change it up and make it more difficult again so that you can continue to overload. Okay? So how many of you guys have an actual cable subscription where you get like actual cable TV? Anybody? Okay. Madison does. Okay. They have cable in the dorms? Like
No.
Over in Headington? No, nothing? Seriously, you pay all that much and there's not any TV?
No.
You get Netflix? You get anything over there? What the what?
You have to bring your own.
No, but I mean, like, but you can hook it up to the little coax cable out of the wall and it works, right? Anybody? Everybody knows? Yes. Some of y'all had to live in the freshman dorms, right? You go over to Walker, they got TV over there.
They don't have it in the colleges. I know that.
Okay. What is the world coming to? All right. Well, many of you probably, like my wife and I now, have streaming services, and we have Hulu that has live TV, so we can watch sports. But otherwise, we're always on, like, it's mostly Disney Plus. A lot of cartoon watching in the Black household. On regular television, one of the things that they used to have were these things called infomercials, right? And it's like 30-minute long commercials where you could pay and advertise. They're always on early in the morning or late at night. And so I've never been a very good sleeper, so get up early in the morning. And they were always advertising a workout program called P90X. You guys aware of what anybody heard of P90X? Yes, Madison's chuckling here.
My parents did it.
Your parents did it, okay.
Like a long time ago.
All these infomercials. I mean, this was like in the early 2000s, okay, on these things. So the science that they alleged was behind P90X was something hilarious to me. Its terminology. It's called the science of muscle confusion. Okay, and what they did with P90X was you would do step aerobics on one day, and then you do circuit training on the next day, and then you do heavier weights on the day after that, and then you do yoga on a day, right? They'd be like power yoga. We're gonna do yoga with weights. And I'm like, that's not how yoga works. It's not the point. on all of those things, right? All that muscle confusion is progression. It's progressive overload, right? Or a concept called periodization, where you do something for a little while and then you make it harder and you change it up and we organize it and it kind of changes over time, right? But you got to sell something like we unlock this new science. Freaking Dr. Oz show. If I see Dr. Oz, you don't have to pay. My mom watches Dr. Oz pretty much every day. So about every 2 weeks, I get a text message about what Dr. Oz says. If I eat 2 servings of dragon fruit mixed with apple cider vinegar mixed with cayenne pepper, right, that will prevent colon cancer, some other bullshit. Okay? How he still has a medical license.
I think he got it revoked.
He probably did. Baffles me.
That was like 2 years ago. He got it revoked.
Yeah, you should. Right? You have a TV program. You're an MD. People like there's some things that we can say and some things that we shouldn't. Okay? That's all this is. Okay? As you become more highly trained, as you get better at something, it takes you longer to progress. As you reach the upper limit of what it is that you can do, okay, you're going to adapt to much slower. And at some point, you may stop adapting altogether. You will have reached your genetic potential for an increase in muscle mass, your genetic potential for your neural adaptations. This is as good as you're going to be. Okay? It's as good as you're going to be. Few people ever actually get to that point. But it is theoretically possible. And then you just got to keep working out so you don't get worse. So you don't backslide. Okay? But that's the general idea behind all this. Think about when you work out or when you have worked out in the past. Did you do progression? Did you do overload? Were you thoughtful about your specificity? Did you know what your goal was? And were you doing something very specifically to adapt to let you reach that goal? Okay. What if you did a program and you think that it didn't work? What was your goal or what was its stated goal? And think about what you actually did. Maybe it was just that the program was not specific enough to let you reach that particular goal. Okay. All right, so we talked about those things. We talked about this. Safety issues, blah, blah, blah. Right? Don't go resistance training by yourself. Have a spotter. Use good form. There's all kinds of videos online if you want to see those kinds of things. Don't work out when it's super hot or it's super cold, right? Be careful of all of the humidity and these kinds of things. Warm up, cool down, blah. Do all of that if you want, whatever. Dr. Black hates all of these things. Okay. So the last little bit that I want to put on here, very, very quickly, is something about what's called periodization. So I mentioned this just a minute ago. Okay. So periodization is also something, and I'm going to be really honest about this. Some bros, not all, some bros think that periodization is more important than, I don't know, playing Fortnite or Call of Duty or something. I think it's the most important thing in their life. It's like breathing. Okay. The idea of periodization is I have a plan for what I'm going to do this week. And then next week, I'm going to do a little bit more. And the week after, I'm going to do a little bit more after that. Okay. Then I'm going to rest for a week and do less. And then I'm going to reach even farther. So it's this idea of having a long-term plan of trying to progress and overload over a 6-month period or a year-long period. Okay. In general, if you do progressive overload, you're going to have a periodized program because it's going to change. As you adapt and you reassess your maximal strength and you get your progression, this is going to happen. Okay. Within periodization, they talk about what are called macro cycles, not to be confused with getting your macros from a nutrition standpoint right. Macro cycles, mesocycles, and microcycles. A macro cycle may be like a year of training, okay, or 2 years of training. Or if you're an Olympic athlete, it may be 4 years of training, right? This is this big, long, think of a college athlete, a macro cycle is from 1 year to the next, from the end of one season to the start of the next season. Mesocycles are phases of training within a macro cycle. They may be a month, they may be several months, okay? And then a microcycle are going to be individual cycles within a mesocycle. It's a phase that may last a week or 2 weeks or something like that. Okay? And the idea is that I know a year from now, right, we're getting closer to like basketball season. So like I know that I'm about to end this off season of playing basketball and start in season. So I need to map out basically from the start of one season through the competition season, through all the way through the off season until I get back. And we're going to think about in a very thoughtful way, what are the demands? How should we train across that entire sort of year-long period? Okay. I say that some of the bros really care about this, and that's fine. If you are an athlete, if you're playing a sport in college, or you're playing a club sport, or I don't know, you want to play beer league softball, whatever, okay? And you have these alternating off seasons and seasons, this becomes more important. If you're an Olympic athlete, and you got to think about, okay, I need to be in the best shape that I can be in to qualify for the Olympics 3 years and 7 months from now, right? Well, then you need to train in a way that's going to be the most appropriate so that all of your adaptations can hopefully occur and reach their maximum right at the point where you're going to have to do your competition. That's the thing that periodization in some ways lets us do. What's good about periodization is it lets us map out resistance training, aerobic training, skill training for your particular sport, and look at all of those things together and try to map out what we should be doing when. What do we want to focus on when? It's the off season, I'm going to focus on weight training and less on aerobic training. We're in season, so I need to focus on the least amount of weights that I can do to maintain whatever strength I already have, or something like all of that. So this can be really, really, really important, okay? If you want to be a strength coach in junior high, high school, college, professional sports, periodization is really important. But for our guys over at the Huff, right, we're probably only really going to be frat boys that care about flag football. Not as important, right? So if you're a power lifter, you know when your competitions are, then this can become very important. If you would want to train in a different way as you get closer to your competition. That's this idea, okay? Is that we're going to change things around. We have this big kind of phase of things. And then within all of that, I'm going to break it down kind of session by session, week by week to do all of this. There has been a huge amount of shitty research on periodization. People they get so bent out of shape about this. Should you change every microcycle? Should one microcycle be higher than the next, right? I did something this week, next week it needs to be more and more and more. Is that better than up and then back down and then back up? Or I'm doing 3 workouts this week. Should my workouts start off at their worst and get easier across the week? Or should they be high, low, high, right? Should I start off really high and then work my way down? So there's this thing that's called linear periodization, where you change in a straight line. So linear increasing, linear decreasing periodization. There's a thing called undulating periodization, where it changes, it fluctuates, it goes up and down. I work hard and take a week off. I work hard and take a week off, or something like that. So then there's linear, there's reverse linear, there's undulating, there's reverse undulating. And I've gone cross-eyed because they're all fighting over 0.5% of an increase in strength and, you know, 0.5 gram of muscle mass of increase that we're after in the midst of all of these things. And there's some evidence that some's a little better than others, but most of it's completely negligible in the actual practice in the real world. Okay? So that's my pitch. Just do the regular stuff. Do a couple of sets, 8 to 10 or 12 repetitions. When it gets easy, make it harder. If 3 sets is easy, then do a 4. Or if you've been doing bench press with a dumbbell, change it and do it with a barbell if you want some variety. The key thing for most people, you'll be 90% better than everybody else that does things if you'll just keep making it hard. Just make sure you're getting the overload part correct and that your form is good so you don't hurt yourself. Do that twice a week for most muscle groups and you're 90% better than everybody else in the world that's doing this. Okay? It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. Okay? If you want to be an Olympic athlete, we can make it difficult. For most of you guys, it doesn't need to be that. Okay? For actual real health and fitness benefits that apply in your everyday life, go is way more important. Do it is way more important than what it is that you're doing most of the time. Get there a couple of days per week and make sure that you're getting some overload. You'll be way off better off than all the rest of us who go like every third week once. Okay. All right. Monday, we're going to start talking about the cardiovascular system. Wednesday, we're going to have our test. Okay. On Monday, I will assign the resistance training fatigue for you guys. Okay, so don't worry about it this weekend. If you have questions about things for the test, start looking at the study guide now. Don't be me as a student, be better than me. Okay, start looking now. Send me emails, send me text messages, come by my office, come by the lab, ask questions. I have been told that there are these things, it's called Quizlet, right? Is that a thing? That there are apparently multiple Quizlets that have been made on this class for me as the instructor that are out there and available if you guys are into looking at those kinds of things. Okay? I know that they exist. So take notes, look through your notes, make note cards. Monday, maybe I'll show you guys a few example multiple choice questions so I can freak you out, and then we'll go from there. Okay? All right. Who we got in football this week? Sorry? West Virginia. Is it here or is it in Morgantown? Here? Yes, please turn in your